So, in the last part, you saw how India got its independence on August 15th, 1947. So now India is a free country, and let us learn what happened to India right after it got its independence. So now let's first look at some of the problems that India faced after getting its independence. That is right after 1947. What happened? Immediate problems that were faced by India. These are the six main points. Firstly, food and shelter for refugees. So, what happens after getting independence? There will be partition of India to India and Pakistan. So, first, India was a huge country. There was no division of Pakistan or India. But after getting independence, the Muslim nation was to be formed and named as Pakistan. So, a lot of refugees started moving across borders. If India had a lot of Muslims, they wanted to go to Pakistan, so they started moving. And if Pakistan had a lot of Indians, they wanted to come back to India. So, this partition of India and Pakistan was majorly based on religion and nothing else. Second point is integration of princely states into federal structure. Now, India had a lot of princely states and princely states. These princely states were the ones that had some subsidiary alliance with the British Raj. That means they had a pact with the British, these rulers, saying they would help the British and maintain their military in their own states. So there were a lot of princely states by the end of 1947 which were supposed to be integrated into India as a whole. Third point being reinstating economic stability. So as we have already come across something called as the drain theory. Drain theory states that a lot of resources were moved from India to Great Britain. That means we had to again come up with new policies of trade. We had to establish our own industries and bring our economic up. By the end of 1947, the British had almost drained India. There were no resources left. So we had to bring this economic stability again in India. Fourth point is creating its own constitution. So far, we know the British had their own policies and regulations and rules in India which were governed by them. India as a nation, as a country, never had its own constitution. Constitution means writing down or some document which says how a country must run, how what are the rules that are implemented through this to the citizens of the country. This document or this rules and regulations was not there. Now that India had got its freedom, it had to create its own constitution, and that had to be done very soon. Fifth point is protecting the freedom. Now that we have got our freedom, we didn't want it to be lost. We didn't want another colonization happening, another country invading India and declaring its supremacy over us. We didn't want to become slaves of another country again. So, how do we protect this freedom? We had to give more power to our military and make sure that we are enough strong to resist any kind of invasion further. Last point is establishing social equality. The British tried their best to break India down in terms of religion, caste, and social injustice. So now India had to unite. people of all religions, all castes had to come together to form a complete nation on their own. So every all the mess that the British had created through their policies had to be removed now, and the equality of all religions had to be reinstated. So we had to establish the social equality. So these six were the immediate problems that were faced by India right after independence, and we had to find solutions for them soon. Next, let's move on to communal violence. Communal violence is nothing but different communities starting to fight against each other. So the major communities in India at that time were the Hindus and the Muslims. So how did the British separate them? That is the answer to that is something called divide and rule policy. So the divide and rule policy, which was brought by British, broke India into two parts. India, as you know, is a country of many religions, and it had to become a country of different religions due to numerous invasions of foreign rulers. So, a lot of Afghan and the Middle East rulers started invading India, and that's how we got the Nizams, the Mughals, etc. So, India started out to be a secular nation where there were a lot of religions from because a lot of foreign rulers had invaded us. This diversity was used by British to create the divide and rule policy. Lakhs of Hindus and Muslims died in these communal clashes during the partition. As we all know before, we've studied about the partition of Bengal also. The British start separating the Muslims and the Hindus, and they create like a ridge between us. And even after gaining independence, there is a lot of fights and riots that happen between Hindus and Muslims, and a lot of people lose their lives. Nehru, who was the first Prime Minister of India, independent India, could settle his administration of the basis of priority and could calm down the communal violence. So he tried his best to tone down the amount of uh, riots that were happening in all over the country. This helped India to adopt secular principles in the constitution. Even now, we see a lot of communal clashes in India, like the Babri Masjid demolition, the Gujarat riots, etc. So, even now, if you see India as a nation, it's not completely uh, got its peace with religions or it being secular. Even now, or even after independence, we've seen a lot of communal riots. For example, the Babri Masjid, the Gujarat riots, where a lot of people lost their lives also. And I would like to say, on a personal note, that it is, I think, as adults, as young people of the nation, we should bring the country together and not tear it apart. So we've looked at communal violence. Now let us look at another problem that occurred when India was separated into Pakistan and India. Before it was a one huge nation, now it has been partitioned. What happened after that? There was something called a refugee crisis. So, refugees are people who are traveling from one nation to another, from across borders, because they have lost their livelihood where they were living before. So, after the partition, what happens? The Pakistan is was majorly East Pakistan and West Pakistan. East Pakistan is nothing but now it is called Bangladesh, but before it was called East Pakistan. So a lot of Muslim concentration was near West Pakistan and East Pakistan. So people who were of Muslim origin, they started migrating towards East Pakistan and West Pakistan from India. And people who were living in these parts of this country which was in Pakistan, they started moving towards India. So all the Hindus had to come to India, all the Muslims had to go to Pakistan. And these refugees, they did not have a lot of means of transports, first of all. Then they were um, asked to move from their place of birth. So if somebody asks you to leave your house suddenly and find a new place, where will you go? And these were millions of people, not just thousands. There were millions who were asked to move across borders. So obviously, this brought out a lot of crisis in India at that time. The Indian Independence Act, passed by the UK Parliament in July 1947, set out the sovereign dominions of India and Pakistan. So, as I explained, there is India and Pakistan. Pakistan was again West and East Pakistan. At least 10 million people were displaced, as many as 1 million were killed in the violence. So, you can imagine in that time when there was not a lot of means of communication. Of course, there were trains, and people had to start moving by road, by trains, by bullock carts, whatever means of transportation they found, and they were stuck. They did not have a place to go. They were clueless. Imagine 10 million people being clueless in a country. And around 6 million people from Pakistan came to India. Now, where will they find homes? What will happen to their jobs? But by 1951, most of the refugees from West Pakistan were taken care of. So, West Pakistan, that means right now, whatever you see in the map Pakistan, that is West Pakistan, which is near Jammu and Kashmir. So, but that settled, the crisis there settled by 1951. But the crisis of East Pakistan continued for a long time. So now East Pakistan, which is called as Bangladesh, people were still moving from there to India and from India to Bangladesh till 1971. Even after so many years of getting independence and freedom, these people, refugees who were near East Pakistan, did not have anything to call a home. The Bengal Vimochana movement, which was supported by India, could finally liberate Bangladesh. So, due to Bengal Vimochana movement, which was supported by India, there was a birth of a new country called Bangladesh. It resulted in the arrival of 10 lakh refugees to India. So 10 lakh people from Bangladesh come to India. Many settled in the parts of Bengal. That is because a lot of people knew Bengali that time. These people who came as refugees to India, they settled in Bengal. People of Tibet arrived in India. So after independence, after India gets its independence, a lot of people from Tibet also starts coming to India. The government of Karnataka sanctioned 3,000 acres of land for the refugees in Bailkuppe. So even now, if you see, there are a lot of Tibetans who are staying in Bailkuppe, which is in Karnataka. All of this has only enriched our nation culturally. So India so far has opened its arms, and it is taking a lot of refugees from lot of countries like Bangladesh, from Pakistan. We have people coming in from Tibet. We have Sri Lankan people in our country. So India has been a home and has welcomed a lot of refugees since its independence. As you can see here in these pictures, these are the pictures of refugee camps that were built all across the nation when people were moving from one place to another. You can see that they were living in tents and they did not have permanent homes. And there was a lot of crisis for food and water. Imagine 10 million people. They're just moving around from one place to another. They did not have a source of food or water. Now we saw a refugee crisis. Another major problem that India was facing that was there were a lot of princely states which were scattered all over India, and now we wanted to bring it together. So the integration of all these princely states was a major task. There were around 562 princely states when British left India. Imagine 562 princely states all across India. Apart from partitioning India, they had kept three options open for the princely states. So they gave three options to princely states. One is join India, join the Federation of India. Second is join Pakistan. So either join Pakistan or India. Third one was remaining independent. If you did not want to join Pakistan or India, you can be independent on your own. You did not have to join either of the countries. In this background, Government of India, through its instrument of accession, offered an opportunity for princely states to join federal structure of India. So India again opens its arms to all the princely states, and through the instrument of accession, they say if you want to join India, please come and join us. So, amongst all of these princely states, let us take a look at five princely states. First is Junagadh. The Nawab of this princely state had signed agreement to join Pakistan, but the citizens revolted and the king fled the kingdom. So they said, no, we don't want to join Pakistan. So what happens? Finally, they join Indian Federation in 1949. So this is Junagadh, is near Gujarat area in India. Next princely states it Hyderabad. Hyderabad was ruled by the Nizams, as we all know, and Nizams were of Muslim origin. They wanted to remain isolated. They wanted to be independent. They didn't want to join India or they didn't want to join Pakistan. Under communist leadership, farmers revolted against Nizams and Zamindars. So the farmers were not happy with the administration of Nizams or Zamindars, so they start revolting against them. The government of India sent its military to fight Hyderabad and defeated the Nizams. So now Hyderabad joined India in 1948. This is Hyderabad, which is in Andhra Pradesh right now. Next princely state is the Jammu and Kashmir. The king of Jammu and Kashmir, Hari Singh, decided to remain independent. So he also said, no, we are not joining India or Pakistan, we will be independent. Fearing that Kashmir may join India, what Pakistan does is they start instigating the tribal Muslims to invade Kashmir. So Pakistan will get scared that Jammu and Kashmir might join Indian Federation. So they start instigating tribal Muslims to go and invade Kashmir. The tribal band of people occupied more area of Kashmir. Unless the king agrees to join India, the military of India could not enter Kashmir. So these tribal band of people, they start terrorizing the Jammu and Kashmir area. Even if India wanted to help, it couldn't because the king did not agree to join India yet. So India couldn't use any military forces and conquer Kashmir or ask Kashmir to join its federation because the king said no, we will remain independent. Finally, on realizing the severity of the problem in hand, King Hari Singh decides to join India in 1947. So he thinks that the riots and the fights that are happening in Kashmir are very severe, and he decides to join India. Later, the Indian army attacked the invading tribal soldiers and drove them out of the valley. So, Kashmir is a valley, as you know. So, now, since Pakistan had instigated the tribal Muslims to invade Kashmir, now that Kashmir had joined India, India sent its military, its army to drive all these tribal Muslims back. At this juncture, the issue was reported to United Nations organizations, that is UNO. One part of Kashmir remained with Pakistan. So if you see this map now, this used to be a part of India. But now, after the invasion of the tribal soldiers, this part of India remained with Pakistan. And now it is called as Pakistan occupied Kashmir, which is nothing but POK. India complained at UNO against Pakistan on this issue. So India went to United Nations organizations and said Pakistan has occupied a part of Indian Kashmir. What do we do about that? UNO issued battle truce on January 1, 1949. The northeast part of Kashmir that was occupied by Pakistan continues to be with it, and it is called as Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Even now, if you see, this issue has not yet been resolved. Even now, there are a lot of fights and riots which are happening in this area of Kashmir for Pakistan to get back its portion of Kashmir, and India says no, and India is fighting against it as well. So that was about Jammu and Kashmir. Next, let's go to Goa. Oh, sorry. Let's talk about Pondicherry before that. Even after independence, the French had continued their control over Pondicherry, Karikal, Mahe, and Chandranagar. So these areas, Pondicherry, Karaikal, Mahe, and Chandranagar, were part of the French. So the French had colonized Pondicherry. Even when you go to Pondicherry today, you will see a lot of French architecture which was influenced by them. So the French were not ready to leave Pondicherry yet. Many political parties like Congress, Communists, and others wanted them to become a part of India. So the Congress and the Communists and others wanted Pondicherry to be part of India, but French were not agreeing for that. They got a lot of soldiers from Africa, and they started fighting against India. As a result of all these paths got integrated in 1954. Finally, in 1954, Mahe, Karaikal, and Pondicherry become a part of India. Pondicherry then went on to become a union territory of India in 1963. So, as you all know, Pondicherry is now a union territory of India. The last princely state we're going to talk about is Goa. A sustained movement was held to protest against the Portuguese occupying Goa. So, as you know, French colonized Pondicherry, and the Portuguese had their influence over Goa. And the Portuguese were not ready to leave Goa yet. Satyagrahis from all over India entered Goa and declared the exit of Portuguese in 1955. The Indian military entered Goa and took over its administration. Goa had remained a union territory till 1857. So, till 1857, Goa was a union territory, but now it is a state of India. So, we looked at all the princely states. Now, let's look at the new government. So after 1947, there were no rules and regulations for a new government in India. So there was supposed to be an interim government formed. Interim means temporary. Lord Mountbatten became the last Governor General of India. So Lord Mountbatten was appointed as the last Governor General to help us with our administration until a solid government was formed. Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister of India. He was selected as the first Prime Minister of India. In even after this formation of a formation in the sense selecting Governor General and Prime Minister, we still did not have a document in place which explained to the citizens how India was going to be governed. And that is called as the Constitution, which is like a book of rules. So a constitution was still not formed, but later in January 26, 1950, Indian constitution was adopted. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee. So B.R. Ambedkar, as you see in this picture, this is B.R. Ambedkar and this is the drafting committee of the Indian constitution. So in 1950, January 26, we adopt our Indian Constitution. The Constitution declared India as a sovereign, democratic republic. Later, we added the words socialist and secular. So this, as you can see, it is called the preamble of in the Constitution. So this is the page which is called the preamble. It is almost like the first page of the Indian Constitution and this is how it looks. So we declare ourselves as sovereign democratic republic. Sovereign means independent authority of a state. That means our Indian nation can make their own laws. We have the right to legislate on any subject. We can make our own laws. Democratic meaning that the people will elect their government. So, as you democracy means, so every year we have elections to elect our prime minister, right? So that is called democracy. The people of India have the power to elect their leader. Republic means that the head of the state is elected and he is not a hereditary monarch. That means a son, like how in olden days the son of a king, like a prince, took over the king and became the new king. That was not going to happen. Suppose for example now if Narendra Modi is finishes his term, it does not mean his son will become the next prime minister. We again have to have elections to elect our new leader. That means republic. We always have to elect new leader. There cannot be a hereditary monarch. Next, we also add the words socialist and secular in the 42nd Amendment Act in 1976. So we have our Amendment Acts. Amendment Act is nothing but when we want to make some modification to our constitution, it is called as Amendment Act. So in our 42nd Amendment Act, which was in 1976, we decided to add two more words to describe the Indian nation, that is socialist and secular. Socialist means that wealth is equally shared amongst everybody and it is not concentrated in the hands of few people. That means not only few people can have all the wealth, it should be distributed equally. Wealth in terms of money. And secular means the that we have to equally respect all religions. So we cannot say India is a Hindu nation. That is very wrong. India is secular. Secular means there are many religions inside India and we cannot say it belongs to one religion. So you even now, if you see anybody calling India Hindu nation, it is very wrong to do. So the next topic that we're going to look at is reorganization of India. In on terms of what? On terms of language. So after there were a lot of fights and a lot of requests in India that were coming even when the British were ruling, saying that we want separate states based on one common area. What is that common area? Language. So they wanted all people who spoke one kind of language to be separated as one state. This request calls for a reorganization. This is how a lot of states were made in India. As you can see today, a lot of southern states, for example, Karnataka is all Kannada speaking people. Andhra Pradesh, Telangana is Telugu speaking people. Tamil Nadu is Tamil speaking people. Kerala is the Malayalam speaking people. So all this reorganization happened based on language. After the death of Potti Sriramulu, who died after 54 days of hunger strike demanding for Vishala Andhra. So, Sriramulu had an ideology where he wanted a separate state for Telugu speaking people, and this was supposed to be called Vishalandhra. So he died of hunger strike. So he did not eat food for 54 days. After he died, the demand of language based state reorganization went up. So now India was supposed to take a decision on this fact, on this matter. As a result, Andhra Pradesh was formed in 1953. In 1953, reorganization of state commission was formed. Mr. Fazal Ali became the president. Panikkar and Kunjuru became its members. So, why was reorganization of state commission formed? To regroup or reorganize all the states based on language. State Reorganization Act was brought into effect. According to this act, 14 states and 6 union territories were formed. Kannada speaking regions were part of various princely states. So, Kannada speaking people were everywhere and they were a part of various princely states. On October 14th, 1947, Mysore state came into existence. So, they started calling Mysore as one big state in 1947. The demand to integrate all these people into one state was prevalent. They had formed all Karnataka Rajya Nirmana Parishad and demanded for a major integration of Kannada speaking world. So they did not agree with how it was distributed before. So all Karnataka Rajya Nirmana Parishad demanded for one major state. Finally, in 1956, Vishala Mysore state came into existence. So, from Mysore state in 1947, they integrated a lot of Kannada speaking princely states and it became Vishala Mysore in 1956. And in 1973, it was named as Karnataka. So, even before Karnataka was there, we used to call Karnataka as Mysore. Now there are 29 states and 7 union territories in India, including Delhi. So, after all the reorganization that happened, finally we have 29 states and 7 union territories. So, this is how India was formed from basically nothing after British left to this huge, largest democratic nation of the world. I hope you've understood all the topics. Please write in the comments if you haven't understood anything, and I will get back to you. Thank you.